we have our donors, we have everyone who is part of the project that helped create the beautiful ark and bema that you see before us here today. We're going to share a little bit about that story, the story of everything that went into building the ark that you see before us and the project that culminated it. So, as many of you have asked before, how do Alex and I know each other? And I feel like answering that question, it would dive into a very deep dive into the story of who I am, and I usually don't have all the time for it. But the rabbi that I am, the opportunity is right now, and the story is not simple, but let's dive into it right now. So as many of you are aware, and some of you may not, in 2020 I began the project, the Opening the Ark Project in Cincinnati. And the Ark Project reconstructed one of the great wooden arks from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth right here in America. The ark reconstructed was among the jewels of European Jewry. Soaring 20 feet tall and coated in vibrant colors, it stood in Sidra, Poland, but it was destroyed by the Nazis in 1942. The ark, now completed, has been on exhibit across the United States from Cincinnati to the tri-state area. But back in 2020, just before COVID-19 began, it was merely a fanciful idea. Before the nonprofit was created in Cincinnati, or the first piece of wood was carved, during the most impractical time, I wondered if I could somehow build a 20-foot ark that would be a complete replica of a Torah ark that was destroyed in the Holocaust from Sidra, Poland. Originally, this thought was aimed at reconciling generational trauma, the legacy of the Holocaust, and the eradication of not only 6 million Jews, but a native Yiddish culture in Europe. The legacy of Yiddish poetry, art, music, and woodworking had reached its climax by the 1940s. After the war, only remnants remained of many of those things. Absent, though, from all of Europe after the war were the ornate wooden synagogues and Torah arks from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth period. These arks and synagogues were larger than any the world had known and has seen since. The synagogues could seat thousands of people and were made entirely of wood. The arks stood multiple stories of buildings, and it seems unreal, almost like a fairy tale to describe today. And as I said, reconciling this loss and processing generational trauma was the project's aim in Cincinnati. However, we inherited a tremendous amount of guilt after surviving the Holocaust as a people. The numbers of losses were too much to bear and incomprehensible for most. That was one of the many reasons that people have found to disassociate themselves in many ways to our experience. Far more tangible, though, for most, is the loss of something that is precious universally to everyone, and that is art. Art is a universal way of expression. It speaks to things that we all have in common. The 2020 project was born out of high hopes that art could somehow process loss. Accordingly, I set about recreating the Torah ark from Sidra, Poland with a team of volunteers and founded a nonprofit. But only a week or two after I had contracted an architect for the project, COVID-19 began. Suddenly, the project evolved into something else, and it became a project that was about processing not only generational trauma of the Holocaust, but also the trauma of a global pandemic. As the project started, I posted its first video. It was a video of me carving a panel from one of the reconstructed pieces of the ark. And on October 28th, I looked it up last night, 2020, I received a message from Alex. And our conversation went as follows. Alex wrote to me, "I just wanted to say you do spectacular work. There aren't any Jewish woodworkers out there, and even less who work on Judaica." And I responded, "Thank you so much. You do amazing work too." I checked out his Instagram page at this point. "I love your Hanukkah oak. The walnut wood turned out beautiful." And yes, I responded, there aren't many Jewish woodworkers today. Once upon a time, Jews in America and Europe dominated that field. The famed carousels of Coney Island were crafted by some of those original Jewish woodworkers who came from Europe. I continued, we have an illustrious history we've inherited and we should be proud of. It's funny, some of the Yiddish words I commented actually made their way into the lingo of the woodworkers guilds of Cincinnati. And the woodworker guilds, they had no knowledge of the words and their origin in being Yiddish. And it's a testament to the historical influence Jewish artisans had on the craft. shared with Alex at that time, I look forward to sharing the completed art with you and using it for Mincha, Maariv, and Shachri. Alex responded to my message with the following: that is one of my dreams, to design and build an ark. So this is how Alex and I first met. Alex came to me with a dream. It was a dream that I could relate to in a very tangible way. So I called Alex and we spoke at length about the project in Cincinnati as it developed. But there was little that we could collaborate practically in at the time, because he lived in Brooklyn and I lived in Cincinnati at the time and was preparing to move to Georgia soon. So it was about, I think, 2023, I returned to New Jersey and began here at Eitz Chaim. And in my interview with the search committee, I shared my vision of the opening the ARK project with the committee, the project that went into it. And elated, they told me they had been planning to update their Bima and Torah ARK soon. And upon arrival for the final interview, I remember looking at the space and thinking, could I fit that 20-foot ARK into this space? Well, I took the measurements, and to my disappointment, I realized the reconstructed ark would have gone straight through the ceiling, off into the roof. However, this didn't deter me. Shortly after beginning, we received a commitment from Eric Roth to help build a new ark and shtenders for our community. And I remember we began looking at different vendors initially, and familiar with how trade guilds operated, I realized early on that going through vendors would have very little progress. The margins are cut too high with larger operations, and the finished project, they seemed to have lacked a personal touch. We needed to go directly to an artist for this project, and that's why I recommended my friend and colleague, Alex. Next, similar to what had been done in Cincinnati, we formed a committee aiming at bringing a vision to life. Max, Laura, Rick, Robin, Eric, and I would meet regularly for an entire year, reviewing designs with Alex as we breathed life into a vision. We reviewed many designs and started settling on a design for our shtenders at first. Alex and Eric worked with us to design the beautiful ark you see standing behind me today. In our Torah, we read in Parshas Teruma, Tetzaveh, and Ki Seseh, and Parshat Vayihel Pikudei, that it was not one person of a community that came together to build an ark or to build a mishkan as we traversed the desert to Israel. Although there had been an artist assigned to the project, his name was Bezalel, he didn't lead the project entirely on his own. He didn't fashion every piece of gold, he didn't fashion every piece of silver or copper. He could not single-handedly put the mishkan's roof together himself. Nobody on earth could do that. Trained professionals led the way, but everyone joined in. By doing so, the ark and the mishkan that we read about in our Torah, it became a project for an entire community. The mishkan and the ark belonged to everyone. For our community here at Eitz Chaim, Alex was our Bezalel. He was our chief craftsperson, but the contributions of our community, our whole community, would not lead to the ark that we see behind us if not for their contributions. Therefore, I'd like to invite everyone who is part of the project, including our committee members and donors, to please stand up at this time. Can you share with them a round of applause? Alex, thank you. You may be seated. Now, I have been asked many questions about the ark, the symbolism, and I took the phone calls from Alex. I was part of the committee that designed the ark. There is ornate detail that goes into every little piece of this ark, and I really appreciate Alex coming here today and sharing with us that story. So Alex, I know that you have prepared a presentation you're going to share with us, and I'm going to ask you at this time to take it away. Afterwards, we're going to return to the Bima, and I'll say some closing remarks.
I just don't know what the video is.
Yeah, we will get the lights.
Apologize again, because the format is really just for social media, and really record everything. playing in the background, but this is the process for building the,
Do you need a microphone? Maybe a mic.
I mean, if anyone have trouble hearing me, I could. The process, this is for building the lecterns. So I'll just have it play in the background if anyone's interested in what went into the process itself. But I want to speak about a little bit about what went into the design and what my thought process was. The first time I came down here, I had no idea about the shul. I didn't know anything about the community. So I came here with a blank slate, and usually that means that I don't have any like outside, ideas, kind of like murking it up, just as the way that I process something. So when I saw the space and I heard what everyone had to say, and what the thought process and the ideas that they had, and I went home and I kind of like took everything in, and one of the main things that really struck me is I researched a little bit about the shul, and about the congregation, and how Hebrew is so important to the community of the synagogue. And I really wanted to incorporate that into the design itself. So that's why the bima here has the Hebrew words Eitz Chaim in the center. And then I have, but the main idea was taking Eitz Chaim itself, the idea that the tree of life represents the Torah. And everything that we learn from it was something that really was really important in terms of the idea and the concept behind it. Meaning, just first of all, it's used in a lot of lore. If you know anything about in the past thousands of years, we know that a lot of it is related to trees and things like that. But just in the story of Genesis, Bereshit, we have it's told that there are two trees in the Garden of Eden, and that's one of the ideas behind having two lecterns here. The two trees in the Garden of Eden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge, and the choice was given basically. What did Adam and Eve choose? They went with the tree of knowledge, but the Torah was the tree of life. That was all the wisdom within it. And what I was kind of trying to bring together is when you come up to this, there are two trees, and then the main tree in the background here, the ark, represents the Torah. And when you open it, you have the Torah. And in it of itself, I incorporated the word Chai into every leaf. And Chai numerically represents the number 18 and something called gematria. So when you take the letters Chet and Yud, that represents 18. So 18, there are 18 leaves, and that represents 612. And 613 is the number of mitzvot, of commandments we have in the Torah. And the number one commandment is, as we all know, when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, we say that, Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. And that in and of itself is the idea behind this tree of life that I have in the background on the ark. And when you open it, you see the Torah. So you physically open the tree. The trunk is part of the opening of the ark. The trunk itself of the tree, you use it to open the ark to receive the Torah. I also incorporated the Ner Tamid on top, and that was carved from white alabaster. What you can't see, but this is something that I incorporated, is that the base of it is a Magen David, essentially, when I turn it. So it's kind of, there's the Magen David's been around forever, but our understanding of it is also it's known as the Shield of David, and it also represents that Hashem is everywhere, God is everywhere. And the idea there was there are other like mystical and other ideas behind the symbol itself, and how sometimes they say that the center is also pointing to something. So all sides are pointing, but the center also points. So I had the actual stone be in the center, and the Magen David is around as well. So there's a lot that went into the design. The angles itself were I'd say the most difficult part of everything was the lecterns themselves, because of the angles. Every single part of it had to be calculated. I had to work off until I had to make a prototype first in order to size everything to make sure that everything fit. And with this specific wood, everything moves, and I cut it one day, and the next day it's a different orientate. Like it starts to bow, or things happen, or if the weather changes, things start to move. Just the natural aspect of the wood itself. And so a lot of that went into it, and even the bima itself. Just after I finished carving it and sanding it, and I applied finish to it, I looked at it, and there were parts of it that bothered me, and I went back in and did it again, and fixed areas of it to pronounce certain letters, or to resand areas that didn't look nice or didn't fit my, I guess, ideal. And in the end, I'm just really grateful that I was able to create something for your community and for your synagogue. And it's been a dream ever since I've started woodworking to do something like this. And I appreciate the community and the donors and everyone else, and the rabbi and Rick for helping bring this all together and really making a dream reality. So thank you.
Yeah,
sure. If you
Any
guys
questions?
have questions, I'm here to answer.
Because I oftentimes get individual questions about the Ark, and I know that there's a story behind all of it, even down to the story that went into, well, you just explained how you had to redo certain parts of lettering and stuff. So,
one other thing is that the leaves, initially in my original design, I had a lot more leaves here. I wanted everything to have a meaning. And even the leaves on the lecterns, I chose the number 7 because it's a number that you see repeated all the time in Judaism. And the idea behind the number 7, for example, 7 wasn't always the days of the week. This is something that we had. And there's something that came into me. Koren I think came out with I don't know if you know the Koren publishing company, came out with a book on Exodus, and they went into great detail of what life was like in Egypt and things like that during that time, and how important Shabbat was, and how the seventh day, the fact that we rested on the seventh day, that was an important factor. There are 7 commandments of the children of Noah, for example. 7 is the species that are native to the land of Israel. There are so many things that the number 7 represents that they're not all coming to me, but if you look it up, it's a really special number. So I chose 7 for the 2 lecterns as also meaning it's kind of the core. 7 is a number that we consider a completion. So like for example, the end of the week, and there's a reason behind the Brit Milah being the 8th day, because it's after the full completion of the 7 days that a child is alive. So there's everything has, 7 is a very big number in Judaism, it's a very important number. That's another reason that I've used that in incorporating the design itself. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free.
What are the different types of wood that you use?
So there are 3 main types of wood. The lighter wood here is curly maple, and there's debate among this, but the reason why there's a curl is because there's compression in the huge trunks of the maple tree. They start to compress, and that causes this kind of wavy pattern, even though it's flat. And this reddish wood is bubinga, and this specifically is also a figured bubinga, so it's a curly bubinga similar to that. The grain pattern is erratic, so it's really beautiful up close. And then the more brownish wood is cherry.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question,
Yeah.
unless anyone else does. So, you know, as I shared earlier, in Cincinnati, I had built an ark as well, and it required some crazy hours. And I want you to maybe explain to us what it took to build the ark and what it meant for you to be working at home, which I had done too. Can you share with us what that looked like? Because I have a sense of what that's like, but I don't think everyone else knows what would go into a project like this.
Yes, so a lot of the beginning of it was just sitting and designing and thinking about how everything would work and everything would fit. It's because I don't have a huge shop. My shop is maybe, I don't know, 1/10 of this room. If you like this entire, probably Rick's been there, so there's not. And the getting things down into the shop is also another problem. So I logistically had to rethink everything and just redesign the entire shop and make sure that it functioned as, you know, essentially large furniture pieces and large pieces where I usually work on smaller things. So logistically I had to rethink everything. And then when it actually came down to making, the first step was prototyping and making sure that the lectern was the initial prototyping part, where the angles would work, the balance was there. Just the fact that I angled it in certain ways to make it more comfortable for the user, so when you approach it, you have the space and you're not like stumbling over yourself, and that the feet and everything were in their place. So a lot of that was just design-wise, and that was, you know, carving out the time to making sure I had everything correct and, you know, appropriate for what it was. Then when it came down to the actual making, I worked pretty much alone up until the last few weeks where my wife would help me just with the finishing and something like that. But a lot of it was getting all those huge boards. I had 8-foot boards, some 16-foot boards coming in, so then making sure that the neighbor wasn't in the driveway so I could kind of everything down, you know, and then bring everything all downstairs to start working that way. But even before I got to doing anything, things had to sit in the shop just to acclimate to the environment, because if anyone's ever gotten wood floors done in their house, a rule is that you have to let it sit for a little bit, because if you lay them down and the weather changes, the wood will either expand, contract, it'll have issues. So everything had to acclimate to where what I was doing. So I had to work on each piece at a time. You know, I couldn't start this before I finished one because I'd have no room in the shop to get it done. Like the ark actually sat in the upstairs living room for like a few weeks because I had no place to put it while I was finishing up the doors. And just time-wise, it was early morning till like late at night, like I wouldn't see my family, you could ask them. So for months, it was just a constant, you know, balance of just getting things done and making sure everything was, you know, this is a lifelong dream. So it wasn't like I didn't want to rush into something and then because that's when you make mistakes and that's when you have issues. But Yeah, so it was a lot of work. I think one of the videos I have is making the Ner Tamid, which is stone, and I have it in my backyard, and I did it before, I think it was in November, I don't remember what the month it was. But my entire backyard looks like that there was a giant blizzard. Because every surface, the floor, everything is just white powder. I still have, it's been almost a year now. And there's still areas that I had just have like stone powder that is just embedded because of all the carving of the stone. It's such a large piece. Usually I carve in the shop and I have my dust collector and everything going, but this was such a big piece, doing it downstairs, I'd have never cleared any of the stone out. So a lot of that, it's the cleanup and the work afterwards in order to get the next thing going it was a big, daunting task, and it was kind of, I felt like, I'm sure Rick feels that way, because after seeing my shop, it was kind of like a miracle situation that it came out of there. But yeah, I got things, that was a very tough time.
Do you
If
have
I
a
can say
beautiful
it.
word?
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Let me say a couple of things. It was really a privilege to work with you
Thank
on
you.
this thing. Personally, I got the time to be able to spend with you, and I was really amazed at your craftsmanship. But Alex and I would be communicating all the time, about whether it's about details or whether it's about time frames, and we kept pushing time frames. I kept pushing time frames, etc. Try and get this thing moving. By the same token, there were a couple of times where he had some physical ailments and injuries, that prevented him from actually working, but he still did it. Right? When I finally got to go to his shop for the first time, I was amazed that anybody could build anything bigger than about this and get it out of there, because you can't get you surely can't get a sheet of plywood up and down that place. You have to wind down to get to his basement. And he has so many beautiful tools that I really appreciated. So many tools down there that he was limited in what he could produce by what he physically could move into the space. And that's why that piece had to come, that piece there, the ark, had to be finally put together and assembled up in his dining room, living room, I should say. When Marty and I came to help pick it up and carry it to New Jersey, we were both really shocked that there's something that big he was able to do. But the thing that I wanted to communicate to you is I watched Alex come here from Brooklyn and physically put things together, and there was a lot of finishing to be done, and that got done through the evening sometimes. When it was finally pretty much all done, it was probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and Alex and I were here, and everything had been finished, everything had been assembled, was all in place. There was almost nothing left to do. He called up his wife. It's very emotional to me. He called up his wife because he was so proud of what he had done, because it was such a big part of his life. It's the first time in my life I ever saw a man give birth to a baby, because that's what it was. And it was really late. It was 1:30 in the morning. We were here, and he was slowly packing up his tools. It was hard for him to leave. He kept taking picture after picture after picture of this, and he had so much invested in this emotionally that I really appreciated it. And like I say, this is a part of him, and he deserves all the credit in the world, but he has gotten so much self-satisfaction out of it that I can't really describe it. This was really a passion for him, and we all at our temple, we all appreciate that. Believe me.
Thank you, Rick, for all your help.
I had a question, it kind of goes along with what he was saying. I was thinking it the whole time you were talking, and I wanted to ask you, what do you feel when you look at this? Like when you come in here and you look at this now? Because I was here, but my husband was here helping put it together. My son-in-law didn't come to lift up the thing, so I watched it in process, but I wasn't here at the end. We all went home, and you and Rick stayed for hours and hours. But like, what do you feel when you look at it?
I mean, to me, it's hard for me to believe that I created it. It's hard for me to believe that the idea that I had, like, came to fruition. I told Rick before that someone once asked me, like, how did you come up with this design, or how would you be able to relate this to a bar? There was I made a yad, and it was a bar mitzvah, and the bar mitzvah was about, the parsha was about when we were about to cross the splitting of the sea, during that time, and everyone was scared of walking in. No one knew what was going to happen. They knew that God was there, but no one took the first step. And someone went in and made that happen, and then the sea split, without just went in. And, that's how I kind of see it. Like, I knew that it was possible, and I knew that I was capable, and I knew that, but just being able to do it and then seeing it it's kind of an indescribable thing. So it's, again, I work very small. Like, it's not, I make Judaic pieces, like they're, Judaica, to me, the connection to it is, it's something that people use. It's something that has a soul to me. It's not just a chair, it's not just, a daily, it's not like a house key or something like that, these things, they mean something to us, because this is part of our, not only tradition, it's our people. So to create something like this is really just because it's the most holiest thing. A Sefer Torah is the most holiest thing to us as a people for thousands of years. It's the story of our people, and to create something that holds something so holy to us and so dear to us, that really, it's hard to explain. Like, to be able to be a part of something like that, and to be able to create something to hold that. It's not like making a liquor cabinet or something. It's so much more. So to me, it's kind of, I see it as my way of serving God and serving, of being part closer to my Judaism is through this. So it's it's close to my heart. It's close to me spiritually. So to me, this is kind of my connection to spirituality in a way, like to bring the two together. So I know that it's not really answering the question, but it's very difficult to explain
I know.
a feeling sometimes. Not like if I was a poet, it would be easier. But
No, I get it.
this is what that is. So if you ever had a spiritual experience, some people have it through other things. This is my way of doing it. This is my way of showing it and bringing it into a physical world. So that's how I feel about it. So when I look at it, I'm in awe, but as much of it, it's really, I see it, my work is only possible because of the gifts that God gave me. So it's not in any other way. Like, that's how I see it. I appreciate it because of what it is. Thank you for that question. Sorry for rambling.
Going forward, what kind of projects do you have planned?
Right now, I'm going back to smaller work. If something pops up in the future, and I'll have the opportunity again. But right now, what I'm working on is making more menorahs and different designs. In fact, prior to October 7th, I was kind of like pulling myself away and thinking maybe I should do more secular things and make more just like everyday pieces, art pieces or something like that that didn't really relate to Judaism. But it's just I've since then I've kind of like reset, and like this is really what gives me pride. So I'll just continue making Judaica pieces, and I want to make and create more items. I love using wood. It's a natural, it's a natural resource and something that it's just so beautiful. You could, if you look closely or if you look far away, there's always something to see. There's always something there, So it's like the grain itself. It's just like it's such a beautiful. When you look at it, you're just in awe that this exists, just of it being what it is, just plain, and it's So I like to highlight that in my work. So now I really want to do a little bit more of that now and create new pieces, like boxes, like stuff box or something like that. So working on more digital design now, but bringing that into the 3D world. It's just that I'm used to just creating by carving and not thinking about the drawing or anything like that. And now I'm kind of like breaking myself out of that comfort zone. So things might change in the style, but I'm excited to see what happens with that. So I'm on Judaica. In short.
How did you learn your craft? Was it passed down or?
No. So I started. There was a time where I didn't have any idea what I was going to do with myself. I had just lost my job. I didn't know what I wanted to do. College wasn't really bringing me any ideas, or and I walked into like a Michael's arts and crafts store, and I saw the whittling kit, and it was like, this is something I always wanted to do. Well, like, might as well try it now. I have nothing else to do. So I posted a few carvings, and one of my friends from high school was like, that looks like a mezuzah case. I was like, and then it just sparked an idea in my head. I'm like, that does look a little bit like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna make a mezuzah case. And I started just carving little pieces of wood, and I just like fell in love with it, and it just bloomed into, it was in an apartment, so I had, if you thought this shop was small, I used to scare my UPS guy when he'd open the door, because I have full gear on and dust mask and just covered in stuff, and he would always deliver random tools to my apartment building. He's like, are you in construction? And I'd be like, nope. And then he'd just walk away confused, and that was pretty much, but that built on, and now I have a full shop in the basement, so it's a lot more space, but even then, things are different, yeah.
This is not Alex's biggest accomplishment when it comes to this project. His biggest accomplishment is coming in here with a group of Jews who typically don't agree, and I'm speaking from past experience, being part of other projects, and literally driving home, gripping the steering wheel, saying, what am I doing? Why am I part of this? So we've had other projects fall apart. We've had meeting after meeting until we have finally said, I'm not going to any more meetings if we're just not going to agree. Somehow, Alex learned about our group quickly and was able to get us to agree, mainly because of the work that he did on mock-ups on the computer. He would send us these 3D pictures, which were amazing. And the other challenge, of course, was, and this is where Rick came in, he was like the voice of reason, because we're all like, yeah, let's do this, this, and that. And then we're like, well, wait a second. If somebody walks up there and pushes it too hard, it's gonna fall over, somebody's gonna fall, somebody's gonna get hurt. You know, all of that had to be factored in, and somehow, you know, it amazed me every time I would go home, I'm like, something's gonna happen. This is going too smoothly. And, you know, it was really incredible how he knew what we were looking for. He kind of knew our pulse, even without really knowing us. Because the easy thing is to write the check. The hard thing is to get people to agree, hey, that's what we should be doing. Because let's face it, let's hope that this is here. We're all gonna be gone one day. And hopefully they'll still be talking about, hey, remember when this was done, and everybody will know that story. But to me, the first amazing thing was that he was just somehow able to get us all to come together, and pretty quickly. We didn't have dozens of meetings. You know, we were able to do that pretty quickly, and we knew that it would take time before the project was done. But I mean, look at we're all amazed at looking at this, saying, you know, how does this get done in a dungeon? You know, at least I haven't seen it. So, but that's the way Alex explained it. He was in purgatory. But you know, he understates how many. You know, you don't go to Northeast Lumber and say, "Oh, where's the curly maple section?" You know, like that to me is like, you know, we think of woodworking as, well, let's go down to lumber place and pick out a couple of boards and come out and, you know, this and waiting not days but weeks and months for the wood to cure to a point where he could do all the work that he did. And he kept us in the loop. We would have further meetings, and you know, something would come up where we'd have to make a change. But like I said, Alex was so amazing at showing us what we needed to see and what we wanted to see, and allow us to come to conclusions. Because, to be brutally honest, first meeting, didn't have high hopes. I said, you know, because this is, look at this project. You know, to be able to all come together and figure it out, I give Alex a lot of credit for being able to do that, and he was. And we all, you know, I think looked at each other kind of, are we really agreeing? Is this really gonna happen? So Alex, I give you a lot of credit for that, and thank you for helping us as your committee kind of help this along, because this means a lot to everybody, so thank you.
Appreciate that. I remember when we first met, and you know, that discussion we had, and how important it was for you, and you know, I didn't want to let anybody down, because this is not only something for me. I don't see this every time I come into this synagogue. You do, and that was the important thing for me when I came. Like, to me, like, your pain was my pain at that point when I met you guys, and it was a very important thing to me. So you know, again, I came here with the understanding that this is part of my project as it is yours. So that's why it was kind of, I guess you're saying that's why it was so easy, even though I don't feel like sometimes, you know, my mouth takes over and things happen. I don't know why. But yeah, but even with the wood itself, it just getting to that point, I even had, because you said there was, when I went to pick up the wood for my lumber supply, because I called them up and I was like, you know, prep this for me. They're like, okay, it'll be ready by Monday. I'm like, all right. They apparently got it ready Friday, and someone came in and bought half the lot from under me. And then when I came, I had to dig through all the boards to find something that works. So, because every piece was different. So that was like, in and of itself was a whole nother thing. But the fact that it actually got together, even the walls, my lumber supplier, like, it was just like one left after the other with them. because they were like, yeah, we'll hold on to it, or no one buys this stuff, no one wants it for some reason. I was like, are you sure? Because this is the only place that I was like, what happens if you run out? And I had one contingency after another, and they're like, yeah, well, we'll have veneer, we'll have it done for you. I'm like, all right, but still, that pushed off, and it was a whole experience. But it's miraculous that even like there was a lot of pullback from the universe at that point, where they were like, we're not going to give you what you need, but it worked out beautifully. So, I'm glad it worked.
Better than we expected.
I appreciate that.
I mean, we expected good work, but when you've never done anything like this, you were, again, great with us as a committee, sending us emails and pictures saying, hey, just want to let you know, this is where we're at, this is what I've got done. Not gonna lie, you look at it and say, that still looks like it's big time work in progress, but you had your method and were able to tell us, hey, look, it's all happening in a sequence.
Yeah, it's kind of like,
Trust me.
yeah, if any of your kids ever play with Rubik's Cubes, or if you have, it always looks like you're never gonna solve this thing until like all of a sudden like 3 moves and it's done. Well, this was like 400 moves later, but it was like, at that point, I had everything set up. Like the most difficult part was just getting things fit. Like, I don't know if you've seen the video, but the amount of times that I've taken these apart in order to fit the next step, because I wouldn't glue anything until everything was perfectly ready for it. So I would take everything apart multiple times, back and forth, and in the end, it still had things happen. Just, always make sure your clamps are secured because they fell on the legs in the middle of the night while it was during the glue up. So again, that came down to another late night fixing that, and it was just, there were a lot of things to kind of correct. Even with everything, there were stumbling blocks, but again, it was just when I look at it, it's kind of like a miracle that it happened. But I know I was capable. It was just like, it's hard to imagine. I see it in my head, but it's hard to show it to everyone else what your vision is. And then I just started learning that program that I was been sending you 3D files from. So, it was very crude at first, but eventually I got a little more handle on it. So
We're clueless. You've got us to believe it.
yeah.
It's like, when you showed us that, we're like, we're not gonna do that. There's just no way in the time frame and for the cost. And you made believers out of everybody as the project went on, so.
Any other questions or thoughts?
So Alex, would you do a project this big again?
Probably not in like the near.
No.
I don't know. I probably need another year. Maybe some more space. Yeah. I mean, the shop's ready for it. I just, I had to rewire the entire shop so that I wouldn't, because I'd share the same line as their dryer. So no one would do laundry while I was working. So I had to correct that, otherwise I'd get murdered by my family. But yeah, before I started this, that's the first thing I did was like, all right, I have to run electrical. So I ran new wires and everything in the shop, so I was able to actually do the work. But yeah, I'd probably do something, but it's, a lot of it is, it depends on the client. You guys were very open, and you really, as much as you're saying it's me that convinced you, you guys were open to my ideas. So a lot of the times I get clients, even for a small thing, just that they see it this way, and there's no other way to change their mind, even though I know that the end result won't be what you're looking for, because I have an idea of what you want. But they just don't believe that they're wrong sometimes, it happens. So, as much as you say it's me, it really was everybody else that you were open to it. And I think that's why it happened. So, yeah, so it depends on the clients. If I get someone that's willing to see my vision for them and for, like, willing to work with me in that vision, then yeah, of course I'd do something again. But again, I don't know how big I'd go, because there's certain limitations, and I don't know if my wife would allow another stint in the living room. Yeah.
In sum, it is a masterpiece.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We can hit the lights, please. Thanks again, Alex and our community, this was a dream, and this dream has been brought to life. Thank you again to everyone who was part of the project. So in closing, I have a few blessings and some gifts that I'd like to share with some of our donors. So in sharing some details and early blessings, I will actually prepare our gifts over here. Sharing some blessings with our community of our donors. God said to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel from every generation who is moved by the generosity of heart. Accept gifts from me." We celebrate this legacy. Those who moved by generation and free will to build and establish our first holy communal structure, that was the Mishkan in antiquity. They gave gold, silver, and copper, purple and crimson yarns, fine woods, and items from near and far. Today, you volunteer your time and resources to create the community we cherish. We call you those who are generous. We call you those who are kind. We look to you, those who volunteer. We respect you, those who are leaders amongst our people. And we offer our thanks to you who sustain us and give thanks to God, declaring, with a generous gift, I make an offering to you, O God. I give thanks to your name. Blessed is God, giver of generous givers. Amen. I'd like to invite up our donors right now. We have a special plaque that we have created as well. We'd like to invite up Eric and Wendy Roth, Ira and Ellen Roth. I know Judy isn't with us here today, but we are streaming live, so we'll share with Judy afterwards our video. Come on up. So we have a plaque that we prepared. We're going to fixate at some point. It says, "In gratitude for your support in creating this sacred space, where the light of the Torah guides our community, your contributions honor our traditions and inspire future generations. May this congregation be blessed to use this space for years to come. Eric and Wendy Roth, in memory of Estelle and Harry Rotherb and Stephanie Kaplan, Ira and Ellen Roth, and Judy Cummin. The beautiful Ark Torah table and lecterns were lovingly created by the artisan woodworker, Alex Aronoff." Alex had actually prepared for you guys special gifts on behalf of our community as donors for this project. If you like, you can open it up, share with our community. It's a surprise. So one of the branches from the tree includes a eye on it as well.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
It's a high, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's incredible.
It's the leftover pieces.
Leftover pieces from the
Beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you again to everyone who was part of this project. And we will now break. We have some nosh and we will enjoy. So thank you again. And Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov.
Like, do you have any sort of just